Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is Mark Selby, President and CEO of RNC Minerals. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you.
All right, so we're at day 3 of PDAC. How are you finding the conference? Are investors really interested in battery metals like cobalt and nickel?
Yeah. Oh no, there's a massive improvement in the tone this year, particularly on the battery metal stories. I think a lot of investors started picking up on the electric vehicle story in the middle of this year, and over the last 6 months, it's getting a lot of investor attention, and deservedly so, because it's probably the biggest demand story for metals since the advent of China.
Wow, and on Sunday, you gave a presentation about the nickel outlook.
Yep.
Can you share a bit about what factors should investors be watching out this year in the nickel market?
Sure. I'm one of about half a dozen people who speak regularly on the nickel as a commodity. And I think the thing that people need to realize is, even without the EV story, there's some really strong fundamentals in the nickel market. First off, nickel has had one of the highest growth demand rates for many, many decades. In the last 10 years hasn't been an exception. It grew over 5% a year for the last 10 years. That's double the rate for copper and zinc. With that, obviously, you need a big increase in supply to be able to match that. And so, we've had the emergence of nickel pig iron in China back in 2007, which has really helped bridge that gap. But going forward, there's limits in terms of how much more new supply, can come online. And just to meet the trend demand growth, plus even the low end of the forecast people have for electric vehicles, we're looking at almost 1.5 million more tons nickel. So to give you some idea what that's like, that's basically equal to all the nickel we produced in 2010. And so, there's very few projects that are ready, and we're lucky that our Dumont project is one of the few projects that's ready to meet that demand for both nickel and cobalt.
All right, and nickel prices have been surging on the back of the electric car story.
Yep.
Do you expect prices to continue to increase this year?
Yeah, no, I think again, it's the EV story is obviously a positive overlay, but the increase in prices, so far this year has been driven by significant deficit. There's almost a 7% deficit in the market today, and you're seeing real physical tightness. You're seeing premiums in most markets at, in some cases, record levels, and in other cases, back to where they were in 2006, 2007, when we saw much higher nickel prices. So there's a very good, sound fundamental story to nickel that is only going to get better as electric vehicle stories emerge over the next decade.
All right, and do you expect then nickel to become the new cobalt in terms of the electric car story in the future?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, again, 18 months ago, most people, didn't even know, much about cobalt at all, and so, the group behind Cobalt 27, got behind it, bought a lot of cobalt at $10 a pound, and here we're sitting at almost $40 a pound. That's sort of a 4x gain in 18 months. Cobalt 27 just picked up a royalty on one of our properties, and for us, it's their first major investment. And this is a group that spent more time looking at battery metals than pretty much anybody. And so the fact that they chose our Dumont project as their first major investment, I think speaks to the quality of the project. And again, in their press release around it, they thought Dumont was one of the very few projects that would get built this cycle. So we're quite excited to have them as a partner.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of supply, are you expecting that deficit to continue this year, or are we going to see more supply from Indonesia, the Philippines? Is that happening?
Yeah, we're going to be through a prolonged period of deficits. I don't think next year's deficit is going to be as big as this one. There's some supply coming on in Indonesia, but again, that 1.5 million tons is going to, need almost triple of what nickel pig iron's been able to deliver so far in China. And, a project like Dumont, we're the largest undeveloped nickel reserve. We're the largest undeveloped cobalt reserve. And, our project will be one of the 5 largest sulfide operations in the globe. And our first phase is just 35,000 tons. We need 40 Dumonts to meet demand by the middle of this decade. So, it really is a great long-term story.
Okay, that's great. And now that you're touching on cobalt, what do you expect from the cobalt market?
Yeah, no, I think you're going to see, prolonged period of high prices. I think, supply, the only place that you can get meaningful supply is from the Congo. Glencore announced a pretty sharp increase in production at its operations, but again, they're doing that because they see the demand coming down the pipeline from the electric vehicles. Cobalt's going to see a real surge over the next few years. Nickel's a little bit farther away in the EV story, but in terms of real demand growth, it is in cobalt over the next few years, and I think the producers are going to struggle to keep pace with how much demand's coming down the pipe.
All right, and let's just go back to something you mentioned earlier,
Sure.
your recent deal with Cobalt 27.
Yeah.
How is that going to help develop your project?
Yeah, for us, it was they picked up an existing royalty off a transaction we did back in 2013. For us, it's a major endorsement. Again, these are the guys who spend more time looking at anything and everything in nickel and cobalt, and they chose our project to make their first major investment. Again, I think really speaks to what a high quality opportunity Dumont is, and that we're fortunate to have a 50% interest with our partner Waterton, and we look forward to getting into production. By this time next year, we expect to either have it financed or in construction, and/or likely taken out, because there's very few new big projects in the pipeline. So when the Anglos, the BHPs, the Rio Tintos of the world decide they want exposure to this big growth battery metal story, Dumont is the kind of project that ticks a lot of boxes for those. That's the size company.
And I've seen that your stock price has been increasing since the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
What other factors have impacted your share price?
Yeah, the big thing is we've really started to highlight Dumont again as a nickel cobalt project, and so for us that's really sort of the first leg up from here. Again, I think if you compare our project versus the valuations of some of the other nickel cobalt projects in Australia and some of the big battery metals projects, we're equal in scale to the biggest lithium projects that are out there, and our market cap today at roughly $75 million is less than a fifth of most of those stories out there. So we think it's going to be a very, very exciting year for our share price. All
right, and are there any other milestones that investors can expect from your company this year?
Yeah, I mean the nice thing is the project's fully permitted. We did a feasibility study back a few years ago, and so it'll be just financing milestones as we put the financing package together, and we're well down the path on a number of those fronts. So we expect to be in a position by the end of the year to have that financing package in place so that we can make a construction decision if the market's there and ready to go, so which we expect will be the case.
That's great. And my final question for you, we have some investors watching that are maybe considering entering the nickel market. What would be your best piece of advice for them?
Yeah, no, I think with a mining project, you always need to look at the management team running it. What's their experience in the nickel business? Again, with a new metal that's in fashion, a lot of people come rushing in, a lot of whom don't necessarily have a lot of experience. I think two, look at the quality of the engineering firms that are doing the 43101s and other engineering studies. Again, just because it's in a report doesn't mean it's very good. So, really check into the quality of the firm that's doing the report, and where else have they actually built projects. If they've actually built projects, you're likely to get sort of the most accurate answers in the feasibility, feasibility or scoping studies or whatever resource reports are getting done.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today,
thank
Mark.
you.
All right. Once again, I'm Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me was Mark Selby of RNC Minerals.